Hey guys, what's up? So finally, at long last, I have a video up. Been busy. But not I don't just have a video up long last, I finally have a sword review video up. Can you believe that the last time I did a proper sword review was like what, 3-4 years ago when I did my Jian? I know, ridiculous. A channel that many of you guys are going for to check out Chinese weaponry and Chinese martial arts and stuff, and yet I don't have that many sword reviews. Well, part of the reason is money. I'm not exactly rolling in dough. I have a Patreon for a reason. But yeah, finally got a sword review up. So I want to apologize right away, not only for how long this video took to come out, because there was a lot of stuff that I was trying to get information for about this blade that wasn't exactly forthcoming. More on that later. But also I've been busy. And I also want to apologize if this video seems a little less professional than other stuff. Like Scholargram, for instance, has excellent sword reviews. And, well, I'm rusty. I haven't done this in a while. So if this seems a little off-kilter, I apologize. But let's get on with it. So I've been wanting to do a sword review for quite some time. Earlier this month, I saw two swords that I wanted to review on this channel. One of them I felt was going to be perfect. I had a feeling it was going to be an awesome sword. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. Just need to get the money together. I was saving up a bit of the Patreon money. I was able to keep, after some really, really tight budgeting with bills and rent and everything, I had set aside the money for it. And then when I was going to grab that one, they ran out. Just as I literally, like the day that I was going to do, because the night before, it was there. The very next day when I went to get it, it was out of stock. And they're back ordering it now. So I don't know when that one's going to come back. And I hope when it does come back, I'll be able to have the money for it. We will see. The other sword that I wanted to review was this one. And this one was more of a curiosity, an oddity. This particular piece, as you can see, came exactly like this. And what we have here is basically a stick sword. It is a Chinese straight sword. This is not like a Zato Ichi katana or anything like that. This is actually a Chinese Jian straight sword. Double-edged, point. The only thing that, makes it look like it's not a typical Jian is no handguard, no metal fittings, no specialized looking, that interesting looking almond-shaped pommel that you sometimes see in the bottom there. So this one, like I said, was more of an oddity to me for several reasons. Well, for curiosity. So that's something I was like, I want to see what this is like. One, I happen to like designs like this. I've always liked stick sword designs. I've always liked elegant, simple designs. And this appealed to me. I've always wanted one. Two, the other oddity was where I found it. Now, as you guys know, I'm sort of on a hunt to try to find Chinese weapons, decent Chinese weapons, that people can afford for their practice. There's very few and far between. A lot of what's out there in the Chinese market is garbage. Even the stuff that can cost you a lot of money tends to be garbage. Now, there were certain places that I used to recommend. Some of them I still can. But there are others that I can't recommend either because I found out that what they're peddling is mostly junk, or they're no longer around, or it seems that they're no longer around, which annoys me because they gave good products. So to not see them around anymore is whatever. So I'm constantly looking for something at a low price, for people to get their hands on to enhance their practice. So they're not just working with crappy wall hangers or swords that are made only for practice that are made out of very simple, at the best, medium carbon steel blades. So imagine my surprise when I found this at Amazon.com. Yeah, you heard me correctly. I found this on Amazon.com. It looks like the Chinese forgers are selling more directly to us now. People have probably noticed over the past year or so, or over more than a year, like I'd say about the past year and a half, more and more Chinese forgers are no longer dealing with middlemen or selling through, online sword sites, where they're going to have to, have a chunk of their profit taken. Now they're selling directly to us. They've been selling directly to the markets on eBay, as we all know, and eBay was sort of like a buyer beware sort of scenario, but more and more we're beginning to see Chinese forgers selling directly to people, and what they're selling are decent products. And now they're beginning to sell directly through Amazon as well. This one particular seller, who kind of goes by the name Longchuan Sword, a shortened version of it, happens to be selling a variety of Chinese weaponry, as well as, of course, katanas made in China. And this was one of the pieces. Now, the type, what they named this thing, is a little nuts. Bear with me here. This sword happens to be listed as, quote, Longchuan sword / Warring State sword / full tang / Damascus steel blade / handmade / rosewood scabbard. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? So for all intents and purposes, we'll just call this a stick Jian. Okay? I'm not exactly sure why they're calling it a Warring State sword, because the Warring States period did not have swords that looked like this, as far as I know. If this was going to be based on a Warring States period sword, well, for one thing, there'd be a handguard. For another thing, the sword would be a lot wider and a bit shorter than it is. Granted, this sword is shorter than I wanted it to be, but we'll get into that later. This, in my opinion, is more like a Ming Dynasty blade. The reason why I say that is because the blade is, actually it's not that much wider than your typical Jian, but the groove in the middle definitely makes me feel that this is based off of a Ming Dynasty type Jian. Not that Qing Dynasty didn't have grooves in their swords as well. They kind of did, but it wasn't as common. You tended to see grooves more in Ming Dynasty type swords, as far as from the little bit of research that I've done, as well as what collectors of these swords have told me. So let's get into the measurement, shall we? This particular sword, when I first got it, I was a little bit disappointed because I measured it, and the website states that these swords are 29 inches. Now, right there, I'm already sacrificing my standards a bit, because those of you who know me know that I like my straight swords at least 30 inches and up. For single grip swords, single hand swords, I like my swords at least 30 inches, at the most 32. This is 28. Not even 29, 28. I don't like 28 inches. Well, okay. I generally don't like swords that are 28 inches because they feel too short to me. This one grew on me and it's feeling standard to me now, but there's a reason why I like the 30. 30 I work better with 30. That's just me. But whatever. I got over it. It just annoyed me that I was already sacrificing 1 inch. I'll pick it up. It's 29 inches, but I can give an inch. Then when I measure it, 28. Granted, the website does say these are handmade, so there's going to be some, differences here and there, but an extra inch difference is a bit of a difference. Damn it. Now, I don't have calipers, so I can't really tell you the thickness of the tapering. And yes, there is distal and profile tapering on this blade. It may not seem obvious, but there is profile tapering here. And there is distal tapering. Now, I don't have calipers, so I had to try to make do with what I had, and I was measuring with my measuring tape, and it seems that at the base, if we're going to be doing this by inches, the base is like a little bit over 1/4 of an inch thick at the base. And then when you get to the tip, just before it rapidly terminates to a point, over there is under 1/4 of an inch. So there is some distal tapering there. The profile tapering, when I measured, it's about 1.25 inches wide, just about 1.25 inches wide at the base. And then it's 3/4 of an inch at the point just before it rapidly terminates to the point. So those are the measurements there. That does help to give this a light feel. This blade is actually 1 pound, 13¼ ounces. So it feels pretty light. This is definitely not clumsy feeling in the hand, despite where the balance point is, which was something I was a little disappointed in. But as I realized later on, it was basically beneficial. The balance point on this is around 6.5 inches forward from the handguard. 6.5 inches. That's definitely peculiar for a Jian. Jian, I usually see it around 4 inches to 5 inches. 6.5? That's quite a bit, especially for a blade that's 28 inches long. That's pretty short. For a 28-inch blade, I would expect that balance point to be closer to the hand. But then I have to realize the simple handle here. Remember, there is no handguard. There is no pommel. And even though it's the distal and profile tapering, which overall balances the blade, the fittings here do help. So I have a feeling that if this was a bit more of a contemporary made sword, with the handguard and the metal pommel, it might pull the balance point back. I'm going to say maybe it would pull it back an inch at the most. Not guaranteeing all that much, but it could. You never know. Speaking of a handle, you will notice it's a simple wooden handle, rosewood. And one thing I was impressed by with the handle is the fact that even though it's obviously been finished, the grip is still pretty good. I get a pretty good purchase on this. The whole time I was working on it, I was testing this out, I didn't feel at all that this thing was going to fly out of my hands. I didn't worry about if my hands got sweaty, this slipping off. I could get a good purchase. I could get a pretty decent grip, almost as if it's been cord wrapped or leather wrapped, even though it's not. But it doesn't feel rough in the hand either. It's a good finish, but it's a finish that I'm not afraid of having slip out. You will also notice the bamboo pegs through here. They did say this is a full tang blade, and it does feel that way. Like, I don't feel like there's so much weight here and then there's like an empty handle here. You know what I mean? It does feel like you can feel the whole blade all the way through, and the bamboo pegs are securing it, similar to the way you would see in a Japanese katana. You can even see at the base of the handle, I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can see a little bit of metal there. And that to me looks like as they were polishing this down and, you know, finishing the handle, that they kind of got to the tang itself, because I could see just a little bit of the round bottom of the tang. And I mean, I could be wrong. That could just be something that's securing it in place, but I have a feeling that's actually the tang. And I wouldn't be surprised if, because of the shape of the bottom of this, I have a feeling that this forge probably just hammers these types of blades out, and it doesn't matter what they put them in. This could easily have been, this blade could easily have been put into, you know, a Jian with the typical handle and handguard and fittings, and they just happen to stick it on here. Now, the one thing that disappointed me a little bit is the fact that I can't easily disassemble this without destroying the handle. Even if I take the pegs out, this is not going to easily slide out. I'm pretty sure this has been glued in. And so, in order for me to see the tang, I'm going to have to split the handle, and I don't want to do that. If I'm able to buy another one of these, again, money, if I'm able to get another one of these, I will probably put a full destructive test on that and split the handle and see what the tang looks like, because I want to make sure this is not a rat tail tang. That is something that Chinese forgers have been known to do. They will sometimes, you know, have beautiful looking blades like this, but then they'll weld a rat tail tang on, and, well, that's crap, isn't it? However, because there are bamboo pegs through this, I get the feeling this is not a rat tail tang, and also the way it feels in the hand and what I put it through later, I'm really thinking it's not a rat tail, but I cannot be certain. So, take what I say with a grain of salt. I don't fully know. Speaking of beautiful blades mounted in the handles, well, first before we get to the blade, I did notice that there's one thing that disappointed me is that there's a little bit of a play. When I first got it right out the box, right away I noticed just a little bit of play here. Not much, but just enough to cause a little bit of creaking in the handle. Interestingly enough, if I go this way, no play, no creaking, none of that. If I go this way, then I feel it. But I'm strangely enough, I'm not feeling it here. Like, I'm not feeling it at the top. You know, it doesn't feel like it's loose here, it doesn't feel like it's loose here. I'm only feeling it in this one bamboo peg up here. So, that I guess is basically telling me that that peg is securing it, but that does kind of bother me that you have a little bit of play there. Now, the blade itself is, again, they call it Damascus steel, and as you can see, it does have that nice wood grain-like pattern, or that water-type pattern on there. Very beautiful. But I don't know what type of steel was used. That kind of annoyed me. When I contacted the seller, I asked them two specific questions. One of them I got a straight-up answer on, and the other one I didn't. The two questions I asked were, is this sword good for cutting? And what type of steel was used to make the blade? First question was answered instant, like straight on. No flim-flam, no BS. No, the person said. No, this sword is not made for cutting. Which disappointed me, but I was like, okay, fine, whatever. What was I expecting for $150, right? Especially a Chinese sword. If this was a katana, it probably would have been able to cut. They probably told me, yeah, it's great for cutting, but whatever. It's the Chinese weapon market for you, right? So I thought. But then when it came down to the steel, and I asked what type of steel it was used, oh, this is Damascus steel. That doesn't mean anything. When you see the term Damascus steel, all that basically means is they just folded the freaking thing so you can see a pretty pattern on it. It's not even real Damascus steel. That's a topic for another video for another time. You see Damascus steel, it just means folded blade. Probably more than one steel that they welded together and folded and hammered out. You got a nice, pretty looking pattern. So I emailed the seller back and said, look, I know it's Damascus steel. I know it's a folded sword. It's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking what type of steel was used to fold it. Was it 1060, 1055, 1095, T10, 9260? What did you use to make this blade? I got back special, something to the effect of special China folded steel used to make Damascus. So I couldn't get a straight answer on this, guys. I don't know whether it was because of a language barrier, because the person is definitely Chinese. I don't know if they just didn't want to tell me, or if they just didn't really understand what I was asking them. But I could not get an official answer on exactly what type of steel was used to make the blade. However, what I do know of the Chinese sword market inclines me to believe that this was made out of a mixture of 1045 and 1055 steel. The reason why I say that is because whenever I've looked around online and I've seen swords at around this price range with a folded blade, they are pretty much always made out of 1045 and 1055 steel, without fail. It's always 1045, 1055, whether it's a katana, whether it's a dao, or whether it's a Jian. Whenever I see it around this price range, from around 150 bucks to around 250 bucks, whenever it's folded, 1045, 1055 steel, without fail. No matter where I look. So I am inclined to believe that this is the same thing. This is pretty much 1045, 1055 steel. And whatever steel it was made from, I think it was pretty well heat treated. As you can see, there is enough flex in here to handle the shock of a blow. You can see, pretty good. And by the way, me doing that has not caused any extra creaking in here, thankfully. So, this leads me to the handling of it. Because I couldn't cut with it, right? So I had to see, well, how does it feel in the hand, even with that forward balance point? Well, not bad, actually. I was like, this is still a fairly quick sword. After all, it is only 1 pound 13 ounces. And even with the forward balance, it doesn't feel clumsy. It doesn't feel like a crowbar. As you can see here, I had no problem whipping it around, you know, making it move as quickly as I possibly can make it move. So, if you're going to be doing drills and stuff with this, it's not going to feel bad in the hand. You'll be able to do your drills with this. You'll be able to do your forms with this. No problem. It won't throw you off. At least if you're an intermediate student. But, the guy did say it couldn't cut. But where's the fun in not testing that, right? How's the edge? Well, as you can see here, it's basically paper cutting sharp. It's able to cut paper with some effort. This isn't like my Han Jian. My Han Jian, I could just cut through no problem. This thing did give me a bit of a problem right off the bat, but I was still able to cut the paper with it. So it's not exactly perfectly paper cutting sharp, but it can cut it. So I was thinking, okay, that's probably why the guy told me that it wasn't suitable for cutting. But it does have an edge. I mean, you don't want to run your thumb on this thing. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's the blade itself, or maybe the blade isn't properly heat treated, or maybe it's because it's just a simple handle, you know, or a mixture of these things. But then I decided, I bought this thing to review it. Fuck it, let's just try it out. So, I went out there and I got some bottles and I went to work. I mean, where's the fun in not testing its cutting ability, right? And this is where this thing surprised the hell out of me. I am really sorry that for some idiotic reason my phone, or I should say my camera, whatever, camera phone, kept cutting off in the middle of me cutting these. So you missed a lot of some really good cuts. But as you can easily see from all these cut bottles here, they sliced right through. I mean, the sword did a wonderful job. Look at how clean that cut is. Same here, this one, cut clean through. This was one of the ones that I pierced through. As you can see, that tip is really, well done. You can see that one right there, cut cleanly in half, that gold colored one. Milk jug, which we didn't get a chance to see, I'd sliced it twice, cut off that piece, then cut off this piece before it finally fell. That's the other piece right there. This thing got the job done. I didn't show it. It pierced all the way through, so it went through the back as well on that one. This thing got the job done. There's another one of these bottles that I had stabbed right through before I cut it completely in half, and I'm trying to find. This was the one, yeah, that gold one. I stabbed it first, went clean through, and then I cut it in half. And as you can see, it got the job done. As you can see, it cuts. It cuts well. This thing's a little beast. I couldn't believe how easily I was cutting through those things. I didn't even feel that much shock. I didn't feel any shock in the handle. No bad shock. It just went through as if the bottle wasn't there. And granted, I wasn't doing this with like really easy to cut bottles like milk jugs. I was doing this with antifreeze bottles, which have some, some toughness to them. That's specifically why I picked those bottles. I didn't want to pick any heavier targets because, quite frankly, I don't know if this thing could handle something like, I'd say like, like double wrapped tatami mats or something like that. I wasn't exactly going to put this through that because the guy said it's not suitable for cutting. I'm going to try to push things too hard unless I had two of these. But I figured, the antifreeze bottles, those aren't very easy to cut for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. That will test the construction of this blade. Right through. Like they weren't even there. Thrusting ability was perfect, which is not surprising considering, I don't know if I showed you the way the tip was shaped yet, but it's perfectly made for thrusting. There is no, it terminates to a beautiful point, almost like a chisel point there. It's great. So thrusting wasn't a problem. Cutting was no problem. It just sliced right through, and there was no edge degradation. Like, it doesn't feel duller. It's at the exact same sharpness it was when I first tested it out the box. As same sharpness after I cut the bottles. This thing is a bargain, in my opinion, at $150. I'm really surprised that this thing performed as well as it did. And after I was marveling at this blade, I'm like looking at this going, oh my God, this thing is a beast. And I took a really good look at the blade, and I realized something else which surprised me for its price point. This is clam-shaped. This is not your typical, four-sided diamond slope edge that you tend to see on lower priced shiny straight swords, lower priced Jian. So this is clam-shaped. I don't know if you can see that, how well you can tell, but it curves toward the edge. I do not see that at this price point. Hell, I don't even see that at higher price points. Like, the only time I've seen, there's only two swords I can think of where I've seen that clam-shaped type geometry. On the Scott Rodell cutting sword, which one day I do want to get and test out, and that other more expensive sword that I did a full impressions on. Those are the only swords I've seen with that clam-shaped design. And they're higher priced swords. $150 with a blade geometry like this? Holy shit. Excuse my language. And folded steel? And it cuts? I think we have a winner. This thing was my surprise for the summer. I cannot believe... granted, it's not a perfect blade. Again, because of its construction, and because I don't know exactly what type of steel it is, I can't say that, oh, this is an awesome sword. For one thing, again, I was able to cut through those bottles just fine. So if you're going to be doing light test cutting with this, it looks like you can do it. The seller doesn't recommend it. Got to keep that in mind. But I was able to do it with no damage to the edge, no damage to the blade, no blade degradation. It's not duller. No cracks in the handle, no splitting in the handle, no shock. It works. It gets the job done. So if you're going to be cutting light targets like what I cut, antifreeze bottles, soda bottles, stuff like that, I think you'll be fine. I wouldn't necessarily go after double wrap the Tommy mats with dowels in the middle of them with this stuff. Again, if I'm able to get another one of these, I'm probably going to test it out to see if it does that, because I'm going to test that one to destruction. But for overall practice, drills, light test cutting, this thing is a winner. This has become one of my favorites in my collection. I'm glad I got it. Having said that, I would not recommend this for beginners though. The reason being, no hand guard. A beginner might not, there's a good chance that, them playing around with it, or they might accidentally have their hand go over to the blade. After all, that's what the hand guard was for. It was to keep the person's hand from going on there. It's not like a European sword where the hand guard is there to use defensive techniques. The hand guards in Chinese swords are too small for that. It's more for the protection of the person to not slide their hand forward. A beginner might accidentally do that, so I wouldn't recommend them getting a blade like this. But for more of an intermediate person, or somebody who wants something that they can practice with, this is a good buy, I think. It's a pretty good purchase. It's a decent purchase, even with the slightly more forward balance. In fact, I definitely want to check out the seller's other products, more contemporary products, because if those are a bit better balanced and still able to perform like this, those would be perfect for the Chinese practitioner who's looking for a budget weapon to practice with that's decently constructed. I mean, come on. A folded sword that can cut decent balance for $150 up to around $200, that's a bargain. And on Amazon, no less. The last place I would have expected to get a decent sword. So I got the link for where I got this in the description. You can check it out there. And if you click on the guy's name, you can see all that person's other offerings. Some of those I would like to test out myself in later reviews. But for now, this is the one that we're reviewing, and I am quite pleased with it. So hope you guys liked the video, and I'll catch you guys later.